So I suggest it isn't H-O-W, it's W-H-O. It's who, not how. Don't get it twisted. And if you read this book further, you'll find that there are many in the book that agree with me. Read the varieties of spiritual experience, and you'll see that they listed it as willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness. Because the who is important, not the how. Okay, so what used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually, what did I do wrong? I jumped the whole damn page, didn't I? Okay, it works. We have the proper attitude and work at it. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. Here's where you want to pay attention, because you want to get this in your walk. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. So that'd be a changed behavior right away, right? Because it's constructively, not destructively reviewing the day, right? How many of you have had a little trouble with destructively reviewing other people's day or your day? So that we're going to unwind all that. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? All the stuff they said watch for all day as I went along, they knew I was human and I wasn't. So they're going to give me a chance to clean house again before I lay down so I can receive instruction in the dream state, if that's what's coming. Make sense? It's preparatory. How many of you have received instruction in the dream state? Not something in the psyche, but something real. It's weird when it happens, huh? Okay, so do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? He hates it, he said. Guys, you know why people that are sponsoring, I don't know how many of you are here working with others, but one of the things we tend to do is we suggest whoever we're working with when we get them to this point, you call me every night for 30 days and you go over your review with me. Whether you got anything to say or not, just call me. And I know two things will happen. Either you'll see the benefit and you'll call me every night until you don't, or you'll stop way before 30 days because you didn't see the benefit. And it really doesn't matter. You don't see the benefit. You don't honestly want to. You're not willing to make the effort. I'm not going to cheat you out of your recovery. Go have your experience. Right? And the other thing is, if I get enough of y'all calling me to do that, I'm guaranteed to do mine. Because they push us through our disciplines. Okay? All right. So, were we kind and loving toward all? How many of you had days where you thought you did okay? And then someone said, in your thought life? Ooh. No, I motherfucked them a few times. Kept it in here, though. Yeah? Not you, huh, Kevin? Okay. Kevin just rolling over there. Apparently he's motherfucked a few himself. All right. Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking what we could do for others? So the secret that they're looking at is the balance. When I'm suffering, am I thinking of me, or am I thinking I can do for you? Prove the power to you through you. This is an important part of the walk. If we're not doing this all day, every day, we miss out on the freedom. And we're also not as effective in working with others because we're still walking around with our judgments and our old ideas. Okay? Of what we could pack into the stream of life, but we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. How many of you have done that? Found out you weren't perfect and were crushed by the idea? How many of you had a lot of faith in somebody else, found out they weren't perfect? Because that's also morbid reflection. Why did I trust them? I don't know. They knew more than I did. They're human. Looked like they'd done it before. Right? We're not ever called to trust humans. We're called to trust God, love humans. But if it weren't for an awful lot of humans, I'd have never come to know God. So after making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. So remember, half of them were atheists or agnostics, and they had the question, maybe some of you do, I don't believe in God, why would I want God's forgiveness? Okay, we get you, but this isn't a theology. This is a relationship we're suggesting, and the reason you would want God's forgiveness, because this came from biblical teaching. If you read Genesis, you'll see Joseph had his identity stolen from him numerous times, thrown in a pit, thrown in the jail, all these things. But when he finally got free of all that and was birthing his children, he was, thank you for, bringing me into this bounty in the land of my suffering, right? So he saw the purpose, and there's many other examples of where we experience divine forgiveness. See, we talk about you need to forgive yourself, but humans are shitty at it. Because forgiveness is a divine act. The divinity in you can forgive, but only as an instrument of forgiveness. So you're going to experience forgiveness far more profoundly when you offer it to your brother or sister than you ever will when you're mouthing, "I forgave me." I just want people to get it, because we hear silly things, but it's just not true. But I get free, I get unburdened mightily when I honestly forgive another, and I lack the power to do that. So when it happens through me, I experience it through me. It changes the meaning in my mind. The event taught me more than it cost me. Okay. All right. So we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken, and then they go right to on awakening. So I did a review at night, and then they went right to on awakening. So there we're talking about those downloads you might get in a dream state, and it's not just your psyche, not just some weird dream, but actually some direction. Have you ever got any direction? We said that already. So, and if you don't catch it pretty quick in the morning, it goes away, right? So on awakening, let's think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking it to be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. So that's a simple prayer for those of you who don't like, overly theological prayer. God, please direct my thinking, especially be divorced of self-pity, dishonest, self-seeking motives. Some of you will start going to fellowship meetings, and you'll hear people talking about this book, and you'll know they're misrepresenting it, and you'll have to say that prayer a lot. So you don't demonstrate your spirituality by yelling at them. If you learn what this book says and start walking in the Spirit, you will find the fellowship really annoying until you grow past that point. It's fact. Okay. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to lose. So what conditions? Free of selfishness, dishonesty, resentment. And what does it mean to employ my mental faculties? My mind is working for me and God, rather than me working for my mind, wrestling with God. So what we really learn as human beings, we're not the doers anyway, but we have this central processing unit, and the unit either works for you or you work for the unit. And you'll know you're working for the unit because then you'll be telling yourself, I'm not good enough, they're going to fire me, fuck them all, quit first. Yeah, right? The mind is a tool. Sean brings it up. The mind is a tool. Either you use it as a tool or the mind will use you as a tool. Anyone ever tell you you're being a real tool? Because the mind's driving. Okay. So, goes on to tell us that God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. That simple sentence is so profound. If you will, as humans, realize we live out our entire life, not out here in this plane, but in the plane of my thought life. That's why we can't see ourselves. That's why we can't know what the situation really is, because we assign meanings in our thought life to everything we see, and we never see what is unless we're moving in God's vision. So the reason I would want to clear myself of wrong motives is I'm tired of suffering in this world, right? And if I've learned that suffering is purpose and there's a future purpose for whatever suffering I'm undergoing, then I'm going to be a more patient sufferer at a minimum. And you know why you want to be a patient sufferer? Because you're going to suffer anyway, but whether you're patient or impatient, you're still fucking suffering. So why pile on? Hurry up and get this over with. Yeah? So our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. Has that ever happened to you? Now they're really telling you what the conscious walk is. All humans are going to face indecision. And how many of you thought so hard about thinking about your day you never started your day? Come on, anyone who's ever had addiction, it's like, yeah, I better not start. Better have another bump and see what. Maybe we can call somebody. We may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. So they're talking about indecision, the cost of indecision, and they're going to talk about how difficult that is for people such as us. People with a spiritual malady, indecision is very difficult because we'll really suffer, right? Sitting on a fence is uncomfortable, okay? So here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought or decision. Profound. God, inspire me, and it'll come to me as an intuitive thought or decision. It's not sitting in a room. This is happening on the fly. The conscious walk. How many of you have found out that you get just-in-time delivery? So are you not being taught to walk in faith because of the policy of just-in-time delivery? And we think, well, why does it always have to be just in time? Well, it doesn't, but we've got built-in forgetters. So everything God's done for us up to now, we've already forgotten anyway. So you'll know when you need to know. They're talking about an experience that they had and they shared. So we can chuckle, but if you're not walking in it, and it sounds like something you would like to walk in, we might want to pay attention, because rarely have we seen a person fail. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. Okay, so it says we relax and take it easy. Why would I have to relax and take it easy? I don't have to, but I probably will. And I imagine they wrote it in there because they probably said some prayers like, God, take me, but not that way. And they found out that as long as I'm clinging, I'm still wrestling. Right? Okay. So we don't struggle. They said it twice, so I'm thinking I might be right. Because they wouldn't have said we don't struggle, because this is a book of their experience, which meant they struggled to learn to stop struggling. How many of you have struggled to learn to stop struggling? We're often surprised how the right answers come after we've tried this for a while. How many of you have been surprised? Just started praying, meditating, didn't know what was going on, all of a sudden something was happening for you. Go, wow, maybe something to this. Okay. So what used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Man, cling to that promise. I don't care where you are, what desert you think you're in, serve others, stay awakened. Your promise is coming. Your promise is coming. And you're in it right now. You don't want the promise if you haven't shed the baggage, because when you get to the promised land, it won't be the promised land if you haven't left the fucking bags back there. Yes? Being still in experience and having just made conscious contact with God, it's not probable we're going to be inspired at all times. Why'd they tell us that? Okay, now I know this power, and I know that this power is what you call God, and I love the flow.
I got a great idea.
Well, I'm worried about being inspired at all times. How many of you have got a big flow of intuition, and you said something at a moment, and it was brilliant, and you thought it applied to every fucking situation thereafter? And you found out it wasn't as witty as it was. Because inspiration implies inspiritus, and in spiritus, the timing is perfect, and in Joe's world, I'm just trying to impress often. But I'll find that out and before I get mad at you for not reciprocating how clever I am or whatever. So we might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. So now they're telling us the complexity. The thing is, what I think is complex or I've got all figured out, I still don't have any of it all figured out. But he has it all figured out. Who, not how. And see what happens. So nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely on it. So how many of you, I know a lot of you in here already learned this because you were in places where you were in high alert all the time, and you've learned to walk in intuition, but in inspiration. You've learned to walk in a peaceful place in your mind, even when you weren't in a peaceful place in the body. So we're just talking about improving that. Okay? So we usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be. So they don't even think, I used to hear people say, do the next right thing, but I'm not even qualified to know what that is. I got to be asking what the next step is to be. I may move into it intuitively, but I may blow it too, right? And it's about improving consciousness, right? Okay, so what we're trying to prove to ourselves is all humans need a Savior from ourselves. That's all. And you can believe it or not believe it, but our lives are a testimony to it. That we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. How many of you have had the experience of asking for something to, give you the power to get through this or whatever, and all of a sudden you had resources you didn't know? How many of you found out those resources were in you all along? Sometimes, and sometimes they get delivered from no source that we could have calculated, right? So we ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We're careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. If you haven't been through the process, you may not. But a lot of us come here asking for our difficulties to be taken away, thinking our difficulties are court fines and pending charges and issues, and what really we get the power to walk through those with our head up, and what goes away is my self-esteem problems and my dishonesty and my resentment and my guilt, shame, remorse. Those things go away as I find that I can face life successfully, and if all those things would have been taken away, I wouldn't have been properly prepared for the next season of my life, right? And the other thing is that you're going to find as you study, they ask you to see where religious people are right. One of the things they make very clear in another book I'm familiar with is God responds not to need, but to faith. So as you're walking into the certainty of who you are and helping those others discover who they are, you're going to find your needs go away. They get met. So if circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. So how would I know if circumstances warrant? They would probably ask, what are you doing? Can you show me? Where's Carlos? He's got sisters and relatives calling him now and asking him that, right, Carlos? It's freaking awesome. He didn't wave anything at him. He just did his practice, and they started saying, hey, man, you are a shit show. You're doing better now. What are you doing? Okay. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. So they say, don't replace, whatever religion you practice, don't replace your AA practice with a religious practice, and don't replace your religious practice with an AA practice. They will augment one another, and you'll come into truth. Okay? So if not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we've been discussing. And there are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. So they want you to go take a look at what that ancient wisdom teaches and see if your experience aligns with theirs and see what you conclude, right? So be quick to see where religious people are right. I always like to call the attention the words they use. They mean the words they say the words they mean. They did not say be quick to see that religious people are right. They said be quick to see where they're right. And the only way you're going to do that is do what these people suggest and then read their book and let the author of their book inform you what's going on in light of your experience. Because he will. He has tonight. Make use of what they offer. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. Have you ever not paused when agitated or doubtful? So can you see why that's a helpful little suggestion, although sometimes I lack the power to do so, right? And then I know what powerless means. When I intuitively know that what I'm about to do is harmful, but we're doing it anyway because I cannot rope that in. None of you have ever done that? People will watch me. I just did it the other day in here. Didn't I, Joe? Yeah. As for the right thought or action, we constantly remind ourselves that we're no longer running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, "Thy will be done." Notice how the "not mine" has disappeared now that I'm awake. Interesting, isn't it? This is their experience. Who's feeling that? Some of you are like, that's deep. Just a bunch of old drunks. Try this shit. It's cool. Right? We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. Why do we want to be in less danger of those? Because we hate to admit we're wrong. We don't like to not be perfect. I always wanted to be better than I was. I lacked the power to be better than I was. And I judged me every bit as hard as you did. I tried to kill me. Through torture. Yeah. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we're not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. See, if I don't see everything as something I need to change to my specification and realize it's been perfectly arranged, and if there's an action to be indicated, the source of all knowledge and power is within me, and I'll know, but only when I release my judgments, right? And so when I know that and start walking in it, it gets to be easier to walk in the world. Right? Okay? How many of you brand new, haven't done any of this, but you've stopped? Maybe you went to work today and you did what you had to do, went to class, showed up, were where you were supposed to be, when you were supposed to be there. You're not trying to arrange. You're starting to be more efficient, right? At the very beginning, the minute we accept I might need help, we start getting promise. Okay? So it works. It really does. Why would they tell us that? Because it still sounds unbelievable, right? I still don't believe it sometimes. But I know it does, because all I've got to do is look back and I can see where I've been brought and how I've been brought and how many I've gotten to watch come along. And I didn't have a plan to do it. I didn't want to do it. And I was restored to this being that wanted and had no earthly resource intellectually or financially, and yet, pow, here it is. Because we believed. So, it works, it really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we've just outlined. So what did they just outline? Pray, meditate, pray. Pause when agitated or doubtful. Pray, meditate, pray. Pause when agitated or doubtful. There's your watch, ask, discuss, turn, broken down. Make sense? Okay, this is not all. They never let up, do they? There's action and more action. Faith without works is dead. Why did they remind me of that again? Because it's time to go out and prove the healing power of God to me, through me. I'll never believe in the same way as when I walk out to the man dying in addiction and my story of my redemption is enough to get them to inspire. They'll say something like, I don't believe in God, but I believe you believe. I'll walk with you a minute and see if I can learn something. And on and on and on it goes. So, the next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12, and we're going to talk about that next week. Thanks much.